The shatter of glass ripped through the silence like a scream I couldn't ignore, pulling me from the haze of another sleepless night. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stumbled from the bedroom, bare feet cold on the worn hardwood. The dim glow of the street lamp outside casting long shadows across my cramped Brooklyn kitchen. There he was, a ghost in the flesh, rifling through my fridge with hands that trembled not from fear, but from something deeper, something that clawed at my own buried aches. I froze in the doorway, the air thick with the scent of rain-soaked asphalt seeping through the broken window pane. He was young, maybe 25, his frame wiry and coiled like a spring about to snap, dark curls matted against his forehead, his eyes sharp, haunted brown locked onto mine. And in that split second, I saw not a monster, but a mirror, the raw edges of survival etched into skin that spoke of too many streets and too few mercies. "Don't," he whispered, voice cracking like the glass under his boot, a half-eaten apple clutched in his fist. I needed this. My name is Levi Harper, 32 years old, and for the better part of a decade, this tiny apartment above a bodega in Williamsburg has been my fortress, a place where I pour my soul into recipes that no one else tastes, where the sizzle of onions and olive oil drowns out the echo of a family that stopped calling when I whispered my truth into a phone line 7 years ago. I'm a chef by trade, or what passes for one in a city that chews up dreams and spits out takeout orders. Gay, unapologetic in the quiet hours when the world sleeps, but armored in daylight against the sidelong glances and the what-ifs that still linger like smoke from a fire I thought I'd extinguished. That night, as sirens wailed distantly in the October chill, I should have called the cops, should have lunged for the phone on the counter, my voice steady with the rehearsed lines of self-preservation. But something in his stance, the way his shoulders hunched not in threat, but in defeat, held me back. "Sit," I said instead, my voice steadier than I felt, gesturing to the rickety stool by the island scarred from years of midnight experiments. "Before you bleed out from that cut on your hand." He didn't move at first, eyes darting like a cornered animal's, the apple forgotten as crimson welled from a gash across his knuckles, courtesy of the jagged window frame. Rain pattered against the fire escape outside, a rhythmic plea that matched the pounding in my chest. I turned to the sink, letting the faucet run cold over a dish towel, the mundane act grounding me as adrenaline ebbed into something softer, more dangerous, curiosity. When I pressed the cloth to his palm, he flinched, but didn't pull away. Up close, he smelled of damp concrete and faint citrus stolen soap, maybe from some shelter's meager supply. "Alex," he muttered finally, as if the name were a confession. "I'm Alex Rivera. And yeah, I know this looks bad. Looks like desperation," I replied, tying the makeshift bandage with fingers that remembered bandaging my own wounds after bar fights in college, back when coming out felt like declaring war. Alex's skin was warm under mine, calloused from God knows what labor. And for a fleeting moment, our gazes tangled as guarded, mine probing. He was American through and through, born in the Bronx to parents who'd crossed the border before he could walk, chasing the promise of streets paved with something other than regret. I could see it in the faint accent curling his words, in the tattoo peeking from his sleeve, a faded Virgin de Guadalupe, inked in a moment of youthful rebellion that now seemed like a cry for roots. We sat there as the clock ticked past 2 a.m., the city humming its indifferent lullaby below. I slid a plate across the counter, leftover risotto from last night's failed catering gig, flecked with herbs I'd foraged from the rooftop garden 2 buildings over. He devoured it without shame, fork scraping porcelain like it was his last meal. And I watched, a knot tightening in my gut. Not pity. Exactly, pity is a thief in its own right, stealing dignity but recognition. I'd been there, 22 and freshly out, couch surfing through the village with a backpack of regrets and a heart too bruised to trust. What happened? I asked when the plate was clean, my voice low, as if the walls might eavesdrop. Alex wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, eyes dropping to the floor. Lost my job. Again. Landlord locked me out last week, said rent's late. But it's been late since the pandemic chewed up my hours at the warehouse. He laughed, a bitter sound that echoed hollowly. Thought your place looked empty. Light was off. Figured. Hell. A sandwich. Not this. He gestured vaguely at the kitchen. My sanctuary of copper pots and dog-eared cookbooks. Each spine a testament to nights when cooking was the only prayer that answered. I nodded, leaning against the counter, the cool edge biting into my palms. Outside, thunder grumbled, and lightning flashed, illuminating the posters on my fridge, faded pride flags from parades I'd marched alone. A snapshot of my sister me only tethered to family grinning at our last Thanksgiving before the silence fell. You could have picked a lot quieter than that window, I said, aiming for levity. But it landed flat. He met my eyes then, really met them. And in that gaze, I saw the weight of unspoken battles, the kind that don't leave bruises you can see. By dawn, with the rain easing to a drizzle, Alex hadn't bolted. We'd talked in fits and starts about the bodega cat that scratched at my door every morning, about his abuela's tamales that haunted his dreams, about the way New York chews you up if you let it. I offered him the couch threadbare, but clean, and he accepted with a nod that carried more gratitude than words could hold. As he drifted off, exhaustion claiming him like an old friend, I stood by the broken window, taping cardboard over the gap, the chills seeping into my bones. What had he taken? Not the silverware I'd inherited from Grandma, untouched in the drawer, nor the cash I'd stashed in the flour tin. No, in that fractured hour, he'd stolen something intangible, the armor I'd worn so long it had fused to my skin. And in its place, he'd left a crack wide enough for light to slip through, if I dared to let it. The days blurred into a tentative rhythm after that, like a recipe I'd thrown together on a whim, and somehow, against all odds, it worked. Alex stuck around, not out of obligation, but because the streets whispered threats louder than any invitation I could extend. I didn't push. Instead, I handed him a broom for the glass shards, a knife for the onions I chopped that first morning. He moved with a quiet efficiency, sweeping the floor while I brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead black. No sugar, the way my dad used to make it before he pretended I didn't exist. You don't have to do this, Alex said over the hiss of the percolator, his bandaged hand flexing experimentally. I can crash at a shelter. Or whatever. Shelters are war zones, I replied, sliding a mug his way, steam curling like secrets between us. And whatever's for people who don't know better. He took it, fingers brushing mine. And for a heartbeat, the air hummed with something electric, unspoken. I turned away, busying myself with eggs. But the warmth lingered, a reminder that loneliness had been my default setting for too long. By midday, we'd patched the window with plywood from the alley dumpster and balancing precariously on the fire escape, me steadying the ladder with jokes about not wanting to scrape him off the pavement. Laughter came easier than I'd expected, rusty at first, then genuine, bubbling up as he recounted a disastrous shift at the warehouse where a pallet of canned goods had avalanched on him like a tin avalanche. Felt like the universe saying, "Hey, kid, time to pivot." He grinned, wiping sweat from his brow, the sun catching the gold flecks in his eyes. Pivot. The word stuck with me as we worked side by side, the scent of sawdust mingling with the faint jasmine from my neighbor's window box. I'd pivoted plenty, from the family restaurant in Ohio where Dad's homophobic rants chased me east, to line cook gigs that paid in Burns and Bravos. To this solitary life where pride meant more than flag sit meant surviving the what-ifs. Alex. I learned in snippets over lunch, grilled cheese with heirloom tomatoes I'd splurged on. Had pivoted too, from community college dreams derailed by his mom's hospital bills, to gig economy hustles that left him hollow. I'm queer, he admitted casually while flipping the sandwich, as if testing the waters. Out since high school. Folks took it. Okay. Ish. That single word unpacked volumes the awkward family dinners. The church whispers. The boyfriends who came and went like subway trains. I nodded, flipping my own half. The cheese oozing golden. Me too. Since 25. Not so okay-ish on my end. We didn't delve deeper then. But the admission hung between us. A bridge of shared silences that felt safer than any confession I'd voiced aloud in years. Afternoons stretched into a fragile companionship. I'd head to the restaurant, a hole-in-the-wall Italian joint called Nana's, where the owner, a grizzled Sicilian named Marco, barked orders like a drill sergeant but slipped me extra shifts when rent loomed. Alex tagged along once, lingering in the alley with a cigarette he'd bummed from the dishwasher, watching me through the screen door as I plated carbonara with the precision of a man composing sonnets. You make it look easy, he said later, back in the kitchen, as I stirred a pot of marinara simmering low. Like you're taming fire. It's control, I admitted, tasting the sauce on a wooden spoon. The tang of basil grounding me. Keeps the chaos at bay. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his presence filling the space in ways that both comforted and unnerved. That night, as thunder rumbled Aganatum's wrath, unrelenting, shared stories over takeout lo mein I'd doctored with garlic and ginger. He spoke of his abuela, her hands gnarled from years of rolling tortillas, teaching him to knead dough with love instead of force. She said food's the soul's language. He murmured, twirling noodles. What about you? What's your soul saying? The question caught me off guard. Fork pausing midair. My soul. It had been whispering for years through the empty stool at Pride events. The unanswered texts to old flames. The way I'd stare at the ceiling after closing shift, wondering if connection was just another myth peddled by rom-coms. It's yelling for quiet, I said finally, forcing a smile. But maybe. It's learning to listen. As October deepened, leaves turning the sidewalks to crimson carpets, our routine solidified into something resembling home. Alex found odd jobs delivering packages on a borrowed bike, his laughter echoing up the stairwell when he returned with tales of near misses with taxis. I'd leave notes on the fridge, chili in the slow cooker didn't burn it. He'd reply with doodles, a cartoon chili pepper winking. Small things, but they chipped away at the walls I'd built, revealing cracks where vulnerability seeped in. One evening, after a double shift that left me bone-weary, I came home to find the kitchen alive with chow spots bubbling, spices scattered like confetti. Alex, sleeves rolled up, grinned sheepishly from behind a cloud of cumin smoke. Figured I'd return the favor. Tamales. Abuela's recipe. The air was thick with masa and pork, a scent that wrapped around me like an embrace I hadn't known I craved. We ate at the tiny table, steam rising between us. And for the first time in forever, silence felt full, not empty, but under the warmth simmered shadows. I'd catch Alex staring out the window at dusk, jaw tight, phone clutched like a lifeline that never rang. You okay? I'd ask, and he'd nod. Too quick. Just thinking. About what? He didn't say that's piling like storm clouds, or the ex who'd ghosted him after one too many fights, leaving scars that words couldn't mend. And me. My own ghost stirred, the voicemail from my sister last month. Hesitant. Levi? Mom's sick. She asks about you. Sometimes. I deleted it. but it replayed in dreams. A siren call to forgiveness I wasn't ready to heed. It was on All Hallows Eve, with jack-o'-lanterns flickering on stoops and costumed kids raiding the bodega for candy, that the first real fracture appeared. I dragged Alex to a block party insisted. Really? Waving off his protests with a six-pack of craft IPAs. Live a little, I teased, the bass from a nearby speaker thumping like a second heartbeat. The crowd was a kaleidoscope, drag queens in glittering heels, couples swaying under string lights, the air electric with laughter and liberty. For a moment, we lost ourselves dancing awkwardly to indie rock, his hand brushing my waist, sending sparks I pretended not to feel. Then, amid the revelry, a face from my past materialized. Jordan, my college ex, all sharp jaw and sharper regrets, nursing a beer with eyes that scanned like radar. Levi? Holy shit. Man. The hug was brief. Loaded his cologne the same as 7 years ago, when we'd parted in a blaze of accusations and unmet needs. Alex hung back, polite smile masking the tension coiling in his frame. Old flame? He asked later, as we wove home through costumed throngs, the buzz fading into unease. Ancient history, I said, but the words tasted like ash. Jordan's reappearance unearthed it all, the fear that love was a thief, stealing pieces until nothing remained. That night, on the couch with a movie flickering ignored on the TV, Alex turned to me, voice soft in the dark. You deserve more than history. Levi, you deserve. Now. His hand found mine, tentative, and I didn't pull away. In that touch, possibility bloomed fragile, fierce, a quiet revolution against the isolation we'd both worn like second skins. Winter crept in on the heels of November's chill, frosting the fire escape and turning breaths to visible ghosts. Our kitchen became a hearth, mornings of pancake stacks drowned in maple, evenings of stew simmered slow, conversations weaving deeper with each shared bite. Alex opened up in layers about the father who'd left when he was 10, the mother who'd fought cancer with a ferocity that mirrored his own, the coming out at 16 that split his extended family like fault lines. Tio called me an abomination. He confessed one night, staring into his coffee as snow dusted the windowsill. But Abuela, she just hugged me, said God's got room for all his colors. I listened, heart aching with the echo of my own unraveling, the dinner where Dad's fork clattered. His voice a thunderclap, this isn't us. Levi, fix it. I'd fled to the city, rebuilding from scraps. But the fracture lingered, a fault line waiting to shift. My sister's the bridge, I told him, tracing the rim of my mug. She writes letters snail mail, like we're in the Stone Age. Says mom's fading, dementia stealing her fire. Asks if I'll come home. Will you? His eyes searched mine, brown depths reflecting the lamp's glow. Not yet, I whispered, the admission heavy. But maybe. With you. The words hung, charged, and he leaned in, forehead to mine, the space between us shrinking to breath and heartbeat. No rush, no demands, just presence. A balm to wounds we'd both nursed in secret. That was the gift he gave. Unwittingly, permission to feel without fear, to let the walls crumble brick by brick. But life, that relentless chef, doesn't simmer without stirring the pot. December brought bills like blizzards, mine from a busted oven at work, his from a collection agency hounding an old medical debt. Tempers frayed. I snapped over a spilled pot one night, the crash echoing my father's rages. And Alex retreated to the fire escape, smoke curling from his cigarette into the starry void. I'm not him, I called through the cracked window, voice raw. I'm sorry. He turned, silhouette etched against the city skyline. I know. But sometimes, I see my dad in the mirror. The anger he left behind. We talked till frost numbed our fingers about cycles we swore to break. About love as the ultimate pivot. By New Year's, with fireworks blooming over the East River, we stood on the roof, shoulders touching, toasting with cheap champagne. To what we steal from each other, he said, clinking glasses. Time. Trust. Tomorrow. The vow felt sacred. But fate has a way of testing oaths. Early January. A call shattered the fragile peace. Marco. Voice gravelly over the line. Levi? Kid. Nana's closing. Lease up. Rent tripled. Last shift Friday. The restaurant me anchor. My proving ground gone. Panic clawed at me as I hung up. The kitchen spinning. Alex found me slumped at the table. Head in hands. What now? I muttered. The question a chasm. Now. We cook, he said simply, pulling me up. His grip steady. Together. We plotted pop-up dinners in abandoned lots. Meal kits for the neighborhood. Turning loss into launch. It was madness. Poetry is energy igniting my doubt. Our hands flour-dusted as we tested recipes till dawn. In those hours, I saw him fully, not the thief who'd shattered my window, but the man who'd mended my heart. Piece by careful piece. Yet shadows lengthened. Alex's phone buzzed more voicemails from a cousin in the Bronx, urging him back for a family crisis. Mom's bad again, he admitted one gray afternoon. Rain lashing the panes. Chemo's not sticking. I should go. The words landed like blows. My chest tightening at the thought of empty stools. Silent counters. Take me with you, I blurted. The police surprising us both. He searched my face, then nodded, a smile breaking through like sun on slate. The drive upstate was a blur of highways and heartbeats. My old Chevy groaning under the weight of duffels and unspoken fears. His mom's apartment in a sagging brick building smelled of hospital antiseptic and Hope's faint trace photos of Alex as a gap-toothed kid lining the walls. Her frail form in a recliner. Eyes lighting at his voice. Mijo, she rasped, pulling him close, then turning to me with a knowing gaze. And you the one who feeds his soul. Blushing, I helped in the kitchen. Her recipe's a roadmap of memory. Arroz con pollo bubbling with saffron tears. Evenings blurred into vigils, her stories of crossing deserts for a better life. His hand in mine under the blanket. A quiet anchor. One night, as she slept, he broke, sobs racking him in the dim hall. My arms wrapping him tight. I can't lose her. Levi? Not like this. You won't, I vowed, though fear gnawed me to the fragility of it all. How love demands we risk shattering. Her decline accelerated. Days a gauntlet of doctors and dawns. But in the interstices, grace bloomed, her blessing over weak tea. You too. God's mischief makers. Keep each other honest. When she slipped away mid-February, under a sky heavy with promise, we buried her beside Abuela. The earth soft with thaw. Grief was a thief to stealing sleep. Appetite. The easy laughter we'd forged. Back in Brooklyn, the apartment echoed hollow. Pots cold on the rack. We moved like phantoms, colliding in doorways with apologies and embraces. We pivot again, I said one dawn, pulling him to the counter, measuring flour for empanadisha recipe. Our ritual. He nodded, tears salting the dough. But in the kneading, release came, fists unclenching, breath sinking. Spring unfurled tentative cherry blossoms dusting the park. Our pop-up dinners drawing crowds to a warehouse lot. Laughter mingling with the sizzle of grills. Alex's energy returned, channeled into flyers and flavors. While I chased investor meetings, pitching our dream, a food truck fusing his roots with mine. Harper Rivera Eats, where hearts simmer slow. Rejection stung, But each no forged us stronger. Our nights a tangle of plans and whispers. His head on my chest as city lights pulsed below. Yet the past, that persistent specter, circled back. A letter arrived in April. Postmarked Ohiami sister's script. Urgent, mom's gone. Levi? Stroke. Quick. Funeral Saturday. Please. The envelope trembled in my hands. Alex's gaze steady beside me. Go, he urged, packing my bag with quiet efficiency. Heal what you can. The farmhouse loomed, unchanged porch swing creaking. Fields whispering wind. Family milled like strangers, cousins murmuring condolences. Dad's eyes red-rimmed but averted. At the grave, under oaks heavy with green, I knelt, dirt under nails. The eulogy a choke of memories, her apple pies. Her secret pride in my awards from culinary school. The hug she'd given post coming out. Fierce and fleeting. I love you, son, she'd whispered then, before silence claimed her. Dad approached after. Voice gruff, she missed you. I missed you. No apology. But the crack was there enough for now. Driving back. Tears blurring taillights. I called Alex from a rest stop. His voice a lifeline. Proud of you. Home soon. Home. The word bloomed full. No longer a place, but a person. A partnership. By summer solstice, our truck rolled out vibrant murals of intertwined hands. Menus blending tamales with tiramisu. The line snaking down the block. Success was slow burn. First week's profits barely covered gas. But the faces queer kids sharing bites under rainbow awnings. Families bridging gaps with flavors made it holy. One evening, as dusk painted the sky lavender, Alex pulled me behind the truck, away from the bustle. You stole something that first night, he said, eyes shining. My walls. My alone. And you? I traced his jaw, thumb rough with stubble. My heart, he replied, pulling me close. Willingly. In that kiss soft. Sure. Under stars wheeling indifferent who claimed our theft, not loss. But liberation. Time had woven us through fractures to this firm ground, where love wasn't a pivot but a foundation. And in the kitchen of our lives, we'd cook on together, unyielding. The richest recipe of all,